Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about love,
Sex,
connection,
abundance,
joy,
purpose,
peace,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves.
We come into body to be. And so to be and to live is effectively for our growth and evolution. So this lifetime and the next. But the point of our existence is something quite specific that is not about our growth and evolution, weirdly. And that is about coming into our divinity.
Okay, what is the difference?
It's realizing that we are the divine.
But the point of what existence? This life or just all lives?
Of all lives.
That's effectively the end point of the growth and evolution.
No, you can continue to grow and evolve past. But yes.
Because if you think about it, actually that makes weirdly perfect sense. Because if I'm going to keep coming in and out of lives to learn all the different bits, all the different aspects, I can be the slave driver and the slave. I can be the user and the abused. Effectively what you're realizing is I can be everything. Therefore, eventually you get to a point where you realize I am everything.
Yeah.
And therefore I am the divine. So
exactly.
What you're basically saying is we're graduating.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Yeah. So to exist is to be divine.
Yeah.
Right?
We're realizing, and then actually the world becomes a hell of a lot more fun because if you are divine and you know you can be everything, you can also choose what you want to be rather than having to learn specific lessons in specific ways. And I wonder whether this is why life in 3D was always characterized by pain, because actually that was how you learned. I had to learn that I was this and that, which means I had to be in pain in one and the other.
Wow. Well, it wasn't just that, but separation
as well
brings as well, which I was like, yeah, but that was the bigger piece.
Yeah, whatever. We've banged on about that so much.
Yeah.
And it's like, here's a small other piece that could be more interesting. But actually, when you realize that you're divine and that you can create whatever you want, which actually then means you can have a lot of fun. It's not necessarily about like learning that you are the divine. It's about existing as the divine and then enjoying it. Maybe that's why the word joy is so important.
Maybe. Isn't that interesting that,
Thank you for indulging me there. Go on.
No, I was sort of thinking, well, in the beginning was a free-for-all, and ultimately that's where we're headed.
Another free-for-all.
Another free-for-all, right?
But an even better free-for-all where we're coming from a place of harmony and respect.
As opposed to separation.
Yeah, so when you have a free-for-all, because it's actually two different types of free-for-alls. Because on one side you have one where I must hurt other people in order to survive, right? It's like those like movies where only one left standing, that kind of free-for-all. You have to kill them no matter which way you can.
Yeah.
Whereas this kind of free-for-all that we're talking about is that you do you, I do me, and somehow we do us. You know, everyone's doing each other, which is obviously like the number one part of any free-for-all I want to be part of. But if separation is kind of what allowed us to think I can hurt you and it doesn't hurt me, right? Because I'm still learning that I am you and you are me.
Yeah.
Oneness does the opposite. It brings us back together because if you're able to be at one with yourself, so I can tell you that my body, my mind, my emotions, and even my soul are actually all me. Therefore, I'm at one with me and I operate through the world that way. My soul connects me to you. I'm at one with you. I'm at one with everything. And then even in the last episode we were discussing, I'm at one with money because it's my energy.
Yeah.
And that's really fucking interesting because oneness actually allows us to see that divinity and allows us to exercise it.
It does. When we realize that to exist is to be divine, realizing that divinity does take our growth and evolution, and in that process, we have to ultimately realize ourselves. And when you realize yourself, that is how you make yourself real.
Okay, so how do you realize yourself? What do you mean by realize yourself?
In making real who we are, it's actually becoming the embodiment of the divine.
Okay, you need to explain that way more.
So it's about being able to, I think we had this post back in October. So we posted at some point, you were like, Liz, can you just like do an October forecast, right? Sure, no problem. And of course, and I was like, okay, like I really wanted something interesting to deliver. And they were like, okay, the theme of the month would be asking the question, who am I? But in being able to answer that question is how you make yourself real.
Because how does one answer a question like that when you don't have an ego? Ooh.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, right, because usually we've attached labels and titles.
How do you answer who am I without an identity?
Oh. Well.
Apart from I am the divine, which is not really like like, fine, that's the answer. But like,
it's the also, all. It's everything. That's huge.
Yeah, but
you're like, yeah, Liz, but whatever. I'm not satisfied with that, and therefore it's not a good enough answer.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, okay, I know what.
Well, okay, so Rhea, we'll indulge you for a second with this. First of all, how would you answer that?
Love.
Okay.
So am I. I'm love. I exist to give an experience.
Just another word for saying that you are your divinity. Okay. Would you like to open the spiritual thesaurus?
No, technically.
I am light. I am the universe.
Fine. But love for me is much more tangible than that.
But it's not. Ultimately, you can't know who you are unless you take a giant step backward and expand your perspective. Otherwise, as you said, you're always going to take the sort of ego perspective, right? You're always going to have the ego label of, I am a wife, a daughter, a sister, I do this for my job, blah, blah, blah. Apart from that, if we take a tiny step back from that, what would you say? I am kind. I am compassionate. I am sincere. I'm a good friend.
Depending on my mood, all of those things.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's all these labels. You go from nouns to adjectives.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I am these things.
So then you go from adjectives to verbs?
Pretty much.
And that's where we want to get to?
No, you want to get back to the noun of I am, but it has to be bigger because you're not, you're all these things. And so what encompasses the largest aspect of you? Your point of essence.
Okay, I was never going to give you that answer.
I know. So I was like, I'm just going to give it to her. And also, effectively, what is your point of essence?
I'm that little sphere with all the little holes on it.
Yes, which is the divine. So either way you go, you're just going to keep circling. So when people say, answer.
Okay, fine, but
I am the creator. It's just the other phrasing. I am the creator.
Okay, fine. So how does
that is probably the most magical words any human can ever utter. I am the creator.
And actually, you've probably been creating your shit for many years now. So this can't be a surprise.
Okay, so I know this is going to start to get a little esoteric, but I'll do my best to ground this with your help. Sometimes people have lived in such extreme separation. And we don't really want to like sort of indulge in separation stories and trauma stories. So it doesn't really matter. It's not that significant. But in the process of at oneing, their experience was so harmful and detrimental that to be able to at one, there's still pieces of themselves that can't quite get in there, right? The trauma was too great. It changed them too much. So not all the pieces necessarily fit back together. So they could be about as at one as possible.
And that's enough.
And that's enough for them, right? But there could still just be a bit of them and their trauma out there, and it's still defining their existence to a certain degree. So if they get there, it's, I'm divine enough. But some of this trauma is still going to shape me. It's still going to make it difficult for me to release my ego. It's just going to still inform how I approach my life, right?
This is not an excuse, though.
It's not an excuse. It's just how things can be when we have been living in so much separation for so long. This really is something that you're not going to see in the younger generations. I'm just kind of talking about people who are already in some level of adulthood.
So like from like 20 up?
No, it'd be more like 30 and up. So being at one can feel quite painful. It just requires too much of them. And so there's just a part of them that's just always going to just hold on to some of their pain and trauma. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, oneness, as we understand, part of what makes up 5D is not just harmony, but it's tolerance, right? It's understanding that not everything can conform to a single definition, no matter what it is.
It's not oneness.
No. Well, it's not harmony either, right? So, we're not all going to be in this space of like holding hands and singing kumbaya and looking like one another and dressing like one another and any of those kind of dystopian utopian kind of ideals. It has nothing to do with that. It's just the many faces of the divine.
Can they still do magic and have a good life?
We're certainly not going to qualify good life, right? Okay. Yes, it'll always be, if you get to a certain stage in your karmic evolution and growth, right, it'll be good enough.
You just can't go past that.
Not in this particular lifetime, not in that body.
Okay.
Yeah. It would just be too difficult. But that's where the conflict arises. Funny enough how we talked about conflict in episodes ago. in that foundational episode, how that's why in this stage, we're still kind of facing friction, relationships with a certain amount of friction, right? That are sort of fraught. Even as we enter 5D and we're doing work, we're like, wait, why am I still sometimes feeling this way? Why am I encountering this? And this person seems like they're doing work on themselves. This person seems slightly evolved. What the fuck's going on? Well, it's because even in their attempt at oneness, they're not quite fully succeeding at it.
And can they?
Not fully, no. And that's okay. As we've always said, if we can get humanity to consciousness, we've won the game. Beyond that, it's really not necessary because, again, people 30 and up, a lot of them have lived in too much separation. The longer you've lived in separation, the harder it can be.
Yeah, but everything's always possible.
Always possible, limitless possibilities. We own that.
Yeah. So it might be that it's very, 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 very hard, but it's still possible.
And this is hearkening back why, even if we're in 5D, we want harmonious relationships, but there's going to be times when we might just sort of feel a little uncomfortable. Like, I still can't quite get there with this person. And I know that they're where they are, and it's quite an evolved place as well. And their perspective is quite interesting as too, right? They can see the world from an expanded place. Why aren't we seeing eye to eye?
Yeah. Meant to, I guess.
We're not at a stage, and we're not going to be at a stage in this lifetime where that's really going to be possible with everyone. And that's why tolerance was so important for 5D, was because we really need to be able to accept and embrace that level of diversity. Because effectively what diversity and inclusion and whatever sort of promotes at the moment is just a sort of level of uniformity and conformity, right? To woke ideology. But when we talk about diversity, it is just the many faces of the divine. But again, you cannot realize the divine fully and make real the divine if you are doing so from a place of trauma. And that's kind of where people are getting very confused right now. But effectively, what we're going to have to be confronting in our move to 5D, in a world that is capable of cooperation and harmony and tolerance, is, can I be a friend to my enemy? And we don't mean like, if I can see the darkness in myself and I can accept them, therefore I can accept the darkness in another. It's not like that. But can I still find a level of agreement or common ground with somebody whose values do not represent my own? So, because we have said before, in 5D, we just live in 5D and other people live in separation, and it's kind of welcome to the jungle. It's a sort of like ecosystem that just sort of operates and everything thrives in its own space. But the further into 5D we go, and as we're sort of watching things play out on the world stage, you're never fully immune to what's going on outside of you, right? Even if it's not your world, it is still your world. Yeah. And that's effectively what we're going to be contending with as we become these magical beings, which is, well, in order to operate in my world fully, I might really need to be able to have relationships with people who do not match my values. How do I do that?
Okay.
Because that's going to be the next stage of, where is my power?
Explain.
Because you can't give away your power to somebody else, right? Like, your power is your power. But when we are often having to deal with people who do not match us, usually in 3D, we're trading power, right? One has more power than the other, yeah? And then we find ourselves in that space of friction. But can we then find a way in which we can coexist, possibly operate or work together, and still really not match each other? Wow, that takes a lot. We didn't come into this world. We're not here in this lifetime to build the entire 5D framework and move the entire global collective body into 5D. That's not possible. That would be delusional. But to get people conscious enough to help support that framework
for the next generation,
and get enough people into that framework, right? Just naturally, there are enough people who could fill it.
But what's the realistic nature of imagining that you can meet anyone and have no conflicts?
But again,
is that realistic or no? I'm just asking.
No, not in this stage of our evolution. And because we are here for our growth and evolution for this lifetime and the next. So there will be times in which, in order to grow, we are going to have conflict. But it's not conflict that's meant to traumatize us. It's not conflict that's meant to destroy our lives and our livelihood. It's not conflict that's meant to upend our entire realities. We're moving away from that concept of separation conflict into a different type of, I can grow through love. I can grow through peace. And because I'm at peace with myself and I'm a loving being, that conflict is like, oh, we disagreed about something. Oh no. And then the next day we seem to resolve it. Because when you've developed enough humility, which once the ego goes, humility is so easy.
Is it a given?
It's a given, because by then you've exercised enough compassion for yourself, which enables you to exercise enough compassion for others. And then you can just sort of accept that you are who you are. They are who they are. Neither one is stronger or weaker than the other. Neither one is smarter or less smart than the other, or it's not about intelligence. Everybody just is. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is because you've also said that you can have a little bit of ego to get into 5D.
A little bit.
Yeah,
very, very little bit.
So
as long as it's not informing any of your decisions.
Yeah. I don't need to prove I'm right by proving you're wrong.
The humility also comes when, as much as we've learned, we know that we still have more to go. We still have more we can learn. And it's not from a not good enough space. It's just, that's what evolution is.
And I don't think, I would hope that you don't also mean that from a, we're going to get knocked on our ass again place. It's just, there's always more we can be and always more we can do.
And more to experience. Yeah. I mean, it's the ego that says that we don't have to learn any more than we already know. Because effectively, it just doesn't want to learn that it's not good enough, right? Yeah. It doesn't want to be faced with challenges that then prove that maybe you do need to know more. Maybe you aren't enough, right? Maybe you aren't good enough.
But then there's desire, which tells us the other thing, which is I want to experience more love, more fun, more joy. Yes. And every experience, whatever anyone says, and this is like probably as esoteric as I'm going to get, every experience you have from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed changes you. It grows you. Every single one. I might make my cup of tea differently tomorrow, and I might learn that cup of tea is more suited to me now. I might find a different route to work. I might have an interesting conversation with a colleague that might change my perspective on something tiny. That, and the thing is, I think when we're in our karma, because it has to be so loud to wake us up, right? We associate these moments as like huge and dramatic and painful and shocking, and because to wake us up, and then there are all these emotions waiting to be felt, and so all of a sudden they're like rushing out, being like, yay, finally an opportunity, like, listen to me, I'm really sad, listen to me, I'm really scared, listen to me, I'm really like whatever. And then that's happening, and then our ego's going, no, I shouldn't have let it happen, I shouldn't have let it, Pandora's box, everything fucking breaks down, and it's
very
a shit
well
show,
said.
right?
Love the story.
And then
my karmic reality in a nutshell.
Basically, it was a shit
by
show. But actually we can learn from every experience we have. Every podcast I do, I change.
Yeah.
Every chapter I write, I change. Every conversation with a friend, I change. Every time I do my nails, I change. Every time I fall in love, I change. Every experience I have, whether it's with the same person, I change. I am constantly growing. So I always have more to go because I'm constantly living.
Yeah.
I will keep changing and growing and having more and more experiences. And in those experiences, more aspects of my personality, more skills, more understanding. It all comes at once. It's not like, when people say every day is a new day to change your life, or like, oh, if it starts off as a shit day, then by the end of the day, it could be a great day because you learned something new or whatever. Like, all those bullshit sayings.
Okay.
It's just like, yes, but actually the truth is we are growing and learning and experiencing in even the things we think we're not even, that we've done every single day since we've been born. If I have a good fucking meal, I might learn that I like broccoli. You never know, is my point. And like, in order to be able to have those experiences, we have to have an open mind. We can't allow our expectations to inform us. And yeah, there are going to be some people who it's been really hard to face their pain, and they can only face so much at a time. Or in order to deal with it, they have to give reason to it and meaning to it in their post-karmic life. Okay, I don't know what it's like to be them. I don't know what it's like to feel that. I can only hope that you can find what you need and be as happy as you can be.
Thank you for listening. For more information, articles, and inspiration, find us at karmasmybitch.com and at karmasmybitch.insta.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.